Hi and welcome to part 2 of the restoration work on my Morris Mini Minor. Part 1 showed you generally around the car and the features of the early Minis. This is a 1960 Morris Mini Minor, and it also showed the boot or trunk floor, which was cut away in preparation for new panels to be welded into place. Okay, so now what we see for part 2 is I've now completed most of the rear end. In fact, all of the panels have been welded in position. The first thing that I had to do before I welded the boot or trunk floor and the wheel arches in position was to repair the heel board area of the vehicle. And what I will do is show you around the vehicle and show you underneath the heel board area.
Now the heel board is obviously where the subframe mounts onto, and I've replaced the repair section, well, positioned the repair section about 9 inches or 10 inches in length on the left hand side, and also welded in some patchwork on the right hand side to repair the area in that far corner. Now this is a critical area to get right, very important to get this correct. The distance between the holes is very important, obviously, because the subframe mounts using these holes that you see here, these large 2 screw holes here. Obviously the other holes are there which I'm going to fill in later. But anyway, what I did for this repair piece was to make up a jig, which is basically a sheet of steel, and what I'll do, I'll show you that. Okay, this piece of steel here, and it's basically made out of thin gauge steel, and the holes there show the holes which line up to this end of the heel board, and on the other end of the strip I have 2 more holes at the other end, as you can see, and these go across the other side. So as I'm positioning the repair piece in position, what I do is I bolt this into place along the heel board, the repaired heel board, and the distance between these holes, between the right hand side and the left hand side, is 50.5 inches, and the distance between the holes vertically is 2¼ inches. And what I did is I made the width of the sheet exactly to size, so that the bottom edge was at the bottom edge of the heel board, so I knew that it was exactly horizontal. So the heel board area was quite a difficult area to repair. It's quite important, as I said, to get that correct. What I'll do is show you inside the right hand area. Now this area here is looking inside the companion box, and it shows that I've also replaced these closing panels which go in front of the rear wheel arches. So those have been spot welded in position. Well, in fact they've been plug welded with a MIG welder. So those have been replaced. I've also done that on to the other side as well, to the other side of the car, to the left hand side. And so the sequence of events here was to repair the heel board, to get the heel board up to a condition where it's serviceable. Then the next stage was to remove the entire to replace the entire boot floor. So the boot floor, or the trunk floor, includes this lower portion of the seat pan, the rear seat pan, and this has been welded into position. And what I've done is I've just run some etching primer across the joints to stop them from rusting, but this will likely to come off again at some point as I do some more preparation work during the rest of the restoration work. So so that panel goes all the way and forms the trunk or boot floor. Now, as I said in my video part 1, this boot floor or trunk floor is made by another company who specialise in modifications, because the original heritage panels for these don't come with all of these fixings. Like, this is the tank stand, this long strip. Also this attachment here, which is welded for the spare wheel, and also the early Mark 1 battery box. Okay, now I could have fitted these myself, but this company specialise in it, so I left basically that to them. So anyway, what I've done is I've welded or spot welded the rear flange of that to the
the rear panel, and again I've protected that with etching primer to stop corrosion. So the entire boot floor, trunk floor, is now in place. If we look underneath, I don't have the valance in position obviously, because the valance is best to be left off till a later stage, because there's a lot of things that I need to access from this part of the vehicle. So the boot floor is now in position, which I'm really pleased with. Now the next thing to do was to remove the left hand arch. Then I'll replace the left hand arch with a brand new complete assembly. Okay, and that has been spot welded. The bottom flange has been spot welded to the, don't know if you can see this really, to the lower side of the floor, the flange on the floor here. Well, it's been plug welded, as I say, with my MIG welder. And as we zoom in, we can see the closing panel, which I showed you earlier, which is also in position, that joins the heel board to the left hand arch, and it's spot welded or plug welded along here. Now on the flange, where the wheel arch meets the body side, okay, this has been plug welded and seam welded for our vehicle inspection in the UK. MOT inspection, it requires like for like. So what that means is, it means if something is spot welded originally on the vehicle, it's acceptable to have spot welds or plug welds, but anything that was originally seam type welded is also regarded that has to be seam welded on the repairs. So that's now in place. Also, what I've done, I've put in a repair patch just over here in this bottom corner, and I've welded that piece in as a sub-assembly. My assembly included the flanges and the sheet across here, so that's now welded in position. So this is all new metal, which is looking quite tidy, I think. So as I work around the other side, it's very important to remove one arch at a time, then replace one arch at a time after the boot floor is in position, because if you take out too much metal, the whole body can flex too much and you'll never get the thing in line. So then once I finished the left arch, I then started to cut out the right arch, and then I replaced the right arch the same way as the other arch. After that was completed, what I then went on to do was to fix these subframe reinforcement brackets in position on the left hand side and right hand side of the vehicle. Now what these are for, when the subframe is fitted, the subframe puts a lot of stress onto the rear of the car if these aren't in position. But before these were welded into position, I had to make sure it's in the right position, obviously. Now the two large holes which are on the flanges here, they actually are where the rear trunnions of the subframes of the subframe mount. So now if I zoom out and show you the subframe, this is the left hand side of the subframe, this is the back portion, and this area here is the rear trunnion, and that is bolted onto the floor assembly through these brackets. Now at this stage it's really important to get this right. So what I did is I offered the subframe into position temporarily onto the car, and I bolted the subframe into position on top of these brackets. It was necessary to open the holes up slightly, or to move the holes a little bit on the floor, but these positions are critical. So I've given myself a little bit of room for error, shall we say, because once I do fit a new subframe, the trunnions, which are held in by rubber bushings, may be slightly different on the new rubber bushings. So I've given myself a little bit of room for error there. Okay, so that's nicely in position. The same with the right hand side as well. Now underneath the floor there is also a reinforcement plate. If I now zoom in, there's a plate that you can see which runs across underneath where the subframe would mount. That was already in position by this company that manufacture these floors. Expert